Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really plunge into the heart of crucial ideas, hopefully arming you with the insights you need to navigate our pretty complex world.
It feels more complex every day, doesn't it?
It really does. And today we're tackling something that feels, well, more urgent, more pressing than ever before. It's about how we make sense of reality, especially now in this age of just overwhelming information. It feels like we're truly adrift sometimes, doesn't it, in this vast kind of chaotic digital ocean.
Yeah, adrift is a good word for it.
The sheer volume of data, opinion, breaking news, finding the signal, that crucial piece of truth or insight, it's just getting harder and harder.
Definitely.
And it feels like these powerful currents, like misinformation and maybe even worse, these deliberate tides of disinformation, they're constantly threatening to pull us under.
They really are.
Our old tools, things like intuition, maybe even common sense, which, served us well in simpler times, they often feel like a leaky raft now, like a faulty compass in this storm.
And that's not just being dramatic, is it?
Yeah.
It's a pretty stark diagnosis, I think, of our modern condition.
Yeah.
This whole post-truth era.
Yeah.
It isn't some, distant sci-fi future we might be heading towards. It's here. It's our daily reality.
Right now.
We're living in a landscape where, well, our own cognitive biases, the shortcuts our brains take, are just relentlessly exploited. Facts feel fluid. The very foundations of, shared knowledge feel incredibly unstable.
It's unsettling.
It is. And what's particularly insidious, I think, is how the actual architecture of our digital world, the algorithms, the platforms, they're optimized for engagement.
Yeah.
For virality, often way above accuracy.
Keep you clicking.
Exactly. And that supercharged the spread of falsehoods. It creates this turbulent, often bewildering environment we're all trying desperately to make sense of and, frankly, just survive in.
Absolutely. This struggle, signal versus noise, what's real versus what's manipulated, it defines so much of our public discourse, doesn't it? And even our personal choices.
It really does, down to everyday decisions.
So what's our mission today? If we're feeling adrift, unsure of our bearings, then, well, we need a reliable way to steer, right?
A compass.
Exactly. So today's deep dive is all about equipping you, our listener, with a powerful, honestly timeless framework to navigate this turbulence. We're kind of calling it a reality toolkit for clear thinking.
We like that. Reality toolkit.
Yeah, it's a way to find your bearings, to tell fact from fiction, no matter how choppy the waters get. And this isn't just some academic exercise. It's really about giving you the intellectual navigation skills you need to, well, thrive in the 21st century.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. Before we jump to the solution, to the tools, we first need to really get our heads around the nature of the challenge. What exactly are we up against in this information battleground?
Yeah, understanding the problem first.
We've mentioned misinformation and disinformation, but how do we really distinguish between these two? They sound similar, but they're distinct, right? Distinct poisons polluting our public knowledge. They are. And it's crucial to make that distinction. Because, well, both are harmful, obviously, but their intent is different. And that changes their ultimate impact sometimes.
Right. Okay.
So misinformation. Think of this as false or inaccurate information that's spread, but often unknowingly, without any, malicious intent to deceive.
Right, like my aunt sharing that weird health tip she saw on Facebook.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. A well-meaning relative, maybe a bit too enthusiastic, shares some bunk health advice they saw online. They genuinely believe it's true.
They think they're helping.
Precisely. Their goal isn't to deceive, it's to help or inform. The information itself is objectively false, but the person sharing it isn't trying to cause harm or manipulate anyone. It's often just, ignorance, carelessness, or simply being mistaken.
Okay, so that's misinformation, accidental falsehoods. What about the other one? Disinformation.
Disinformation. Now, that's far more insidious. This is the deliberate, weaponized creation and spreading of falsehoods.
Weaponized.
Yes. It's specifically crafted and pushed out there to achieve some kind of goal, political, financial, maybe even social. It's a calculated act of deception.
So intent matters hugely here.
Massively. The intent with disinformation is absolutely to mislead, to manipulate public opinion, maybe damage reputations, so discord, undermine trust.
Like fake news stories during an election.
Classic example. Or creating false narratives to make people distrust institutions like science or the media. So while both misinformation and disinformation pollute the well of public knowledge,
right,
disinformation actively poisons it with a clear, often nefarious purpose. Understanding that difference is really the first step in figuring out what we're dealing with, and often it helps us understand the motivations behind why something is spreading.
That makes sense.
But it's also important to note, though, while the intent differs, the impact can sometimes be just as damaging, right? Whether it's misinformation or disinformation. Once a falsehood takes root in the public mind, it can be really hard to correct.
Yeah, that distinction is vital. It helps us figure out how to approach it. Like you said, if someone's genuinely mistaken, maybe education helps. If they're deliberately deceptive, well, that's a different ballgame.
Exactly.
But it's not just these external forces pushing falsehoods, is it? This whole environment, this constant barrage of information, often contradictory, it actually preys on our own minds, our own mental shortcuts.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains are, in some ways, working against us in this fight for clarity.
How so?
Well, our brains evolved with these incredible cognitive biases, these mental shortcuts, often called heuristics. They were incredibly helpful for making quick decisions back when, quick judgments meant survival.
Like on the savannah, deciding if that rustle is a predator or just the wind.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Quick, efficient processing. But these same shortcuts, these mechanisms that helped us survive in an analog world, they fail us spectacularly in the modern hyperdigital information age. They become these profound vulnerabilities, easily exploited.
Okay, like what kind of biases?
We'll take confirmation bias. This is a really powerful one, deeply ingrained. It essentially whispers sweet nothings in our ear, urging us to selectively seek out, interpret, and remember information that already fits what we believe, and conveniently ignore or dismiss anything that contradicts it.
The echo chamber effect.
Exactly. It creates these comfortable echo chambers, not just online, but in our own heads. Our perspectives get constantly reinforced, not challenged.
And we feel smarter and more right all the time.
We do. And what's really insidious is that confirmation bias isn't just about what info we seek out, but also how we interpret stuff that's neutral or even contradictory. We often unconsciously twist new facts to fit our existing stories, which makes us feel even more confident in our original, possibly flawed beliefs.
Oh, okay, that's worrying. What else?
Then there's the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is another fascinating one. It's a cognitive bias, where people with low ability at a task tend to overestimate their own ability.
So the less you know, the more you think you know.
Sort of, yeah. And conversely, people with high ability often underestimate their own competence. In this information age, this effect often gives the loudest voices, or maybe those with the least actual expertise, this unearned confidence.
Right, you see that online all the time, someone stating something completely wrong with absolute certainty.
Exactly. They overestimate their knowledge, they spread confident but incorrect information, and others might mistakenly see that confidence as, like, authority.
While the actual experts are maybe more cautious, more nuanced.
Precisely. True experts, because they're aware of the sheer vastness of knowledge, often express more humility. They acknowledge uncertainty more readily than novices do. So you put these innate weaknesses, confirmation bias, Dunning-Kruger, together with this storm of mis and disinformation.
Yeah.
It just underscores how much we need powerful, systematic navigation tools. We can't just rely on our gut instincts. They're often unreliable here.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of the storm. Turbulent waters, deliberate currents trying to pull us off course, and even our own internal biases acting like, I don't know, holes in the boat.
It's not a pretty picture, is it?
Not really. So what does this all mean for us? How do we anchor ourselves when the ground feels like it's constantly shifting? When our own minds might be conspiring against us? Is there something reliable, something truly robust we can actually cling to?
There has to be, right? We need something.
Well, the answer, maybe surprisingly, isn't in some new app or the latest fleeting social media trend. It's not even a particular political ideology that promises all the answers.
Okay.
What we're talking about today is actually a 400-year-old framework, a process that's both rigorous and elegant, yet surprisingly flexible, adaptable.
400 years old.
Yeah.
So tried and tested.
Very much so. It's less a rigid set of rules, really, and more a fundamental mindset, a genuine reality toolkit. I'm talking, of course, about the scientific method.
Ah, okay. The scientific method. And it's vital, I think, to connect this to the bigger picture, to remember its deep historical roots.
Right. It didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Absolutely not. It was forged in the, intellectual fires of the Enlightenment. This period when thinkers started really challenging dogma and tradition, seeking knowledge through reason and actual observation.
People like Bacon and Newton.
Exactly. Brilliant minds like Francis Bacon, who's often credited with formalizing the empirical method, emphasizing inductive reasoning, building general principles from specific observations. And Isaac Newton, whose work on gravity just epitomized this systematic mathematical approach to understanding the natural world. Their work helped shift how we pursued knowledge away from just unquestioning belief toward systematic inquiry.
So it has a rich history.
It does. But what's truly fascinating, I think, is that the scientific method has long since evolved. It's not just for researchers in lab coats anymore, hidden away in universities.
It's relevant to us now, you're saying.
Its modern relevance cannot be overstated. Today, the scientific method isn't just for scientists. It's an essential civic skill.
A civic skill? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a necessary instrument for clear thinking that really everyone should be able to wield in every profession, in our daily decisions. And arguably, it's the most robust defense we have against the sheer noise, the confusion, the manipulation of our current information environment.
So at its core, what is it, if it's not just a set of lab rules?
At its core,
Yeah.
It's really a formalized, systematic system of skepticism.
Skepticism, not cynicism.
Good distinction. Skepticism. It doesn't ask us to blindly believe anything. Instead, it demands that we question, that we test, that we verify. It's a commitment to letting actual evidence guide our understanding, not preconceived notions or emotions.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because at its heart, you're saying the scientific method is basically a commitment to intellectual honesty.
I think that's a great way to put it, yes.
Yeah. It's about being brave enough, maybe, to confront the possibility that your most cherished ideas, your most confident assumptions, they might actually be wrong.
Absolutely. It takes real courage, real intellectual courage to actively seek out evidence that could disprove what you believe. Most of us, we don't actually want to do that.
No, it's uncomfortable.
But it begins with something simple yet incredibly powerful. Just observing the world around you, noticing something curious, something unexplained, and then asking that fundamental question, why?
The starting point. Curiosity.
That initial spark of curiosity, that moment of intellectual discomfort with the unknown, that's what kickstarts the whole process. And from that observation, we're guided to form a hypothesis.
Okay, hypothesis. Not just a guess, right?
Definitely not just a wild guess. It's an educated, testable explanation for an observation. It has to be grounded in prior knowledge, in what we already understand or have observed. And crucially, this is key. It must be testable through observation or experiment.
Testable. Got it.
The source we looked at gives a great, simple example. The Wi-Fi is slow because too many people are streaming.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Common problem.
Right. It's a perfectly valid hypothesis. It's not overly complex. It addresses a common observation.
Right.
It's grounded in a basic understanding of network capacity and bandwidth limits. And most importantly, it offers a clear path to testing it.
How would you test that?
Well, you could, for instance, systematically ask people on the network to stop streaming for a bit. Or you could monitor the network traffic data. Then you observe, does the Wi-Fi speed improve? Does the network congestion decrease? That capacity for testing, that's the bedrock the whole method is built on.
So the hypothesis needs to be precise enough.
Exactly. Precise enough that you know what kind of evidence would support it, and just as importantly, what kind of evidence would contradict it.
And that testability, that leads us straight to this idea you mentioned, falsifiability, which sounds important.
It is. Many consider it the philosophical core of the method.
So can you explain why this principle, I think you said it was championed by Karl Popper, why is it so central to what we call science? Why is it such a powerful filter?
Right, Karl Popper, a hugely influential philosopher of science in the 20th century. He articulated this principle of falsifiability, and it provides an incredibly sharp line, really, dividing what is genuinely scientific from what might just be pseudoscience or wishful thinking or just strongly held opinion.
Okay, so what's the line?
Popper argued that for any claim, any theory, to be considered scientific, there must be a conceivable way through observation or experiment to prove it wrong.
Prove it wrong, not right.
Prove it wrong. That's the key. If you can't even imagine any evidence or any experimental result that would contradict your claim, then it isn't truly scientific, because it's immune to empirical testing. It can't be refined or corrected by reality. It just sits there, unfalsifiable.
Can you give an example?
Think about the classic example Popper himself often used. The statement, all swans are white.
Okay. Seems reasonable, maybe, if you've only seen white swans.
Right. But it's a strong scientific statement, precisely because it's eminently falsifiable. You don't need to observe every single swan in existence to potentially prove it wrong.
You just need
to find one black swan. Just one single instance of a non-white swan, and boom, the entire claim, all swans are white, is conclusively disproven.
Okay, that's clear.
And what's really important here is that the search for that potential black swan, the active pursuit of evidence that could contradict our current understanding, that's what drives science forward. It's about rigorously trying to break our theories, not just confirm them.
Trying to break them.
Yes. And conversely, the more rigorously we try to break a theory through different tests and observations, and we fail to break it, the stronger our provisional belief in its truth becomes. It's like the ultimate stress test for an idea. It separates genuine, robust knowledge from just assertion or dogma.
Wow, that's powerful. It really does sound like falsifiability is the ultimate antidote to confirmation bias then.
It really is.
It forces us out of that comfortable space where we only look for stuff that agrees with us.
Exactly. It forces you into a kind of intellectual vulnerability, encouraging you to actively seek out the contradictory.
Unlike, well, what's an example of something unfalsifiable?
Well, consider a claim like, this company's success is purely due to its ineffable corporate spirit.
Ineffable corporate spirit.
Right. How would you ever disprove that?
Yep.
What evidence could possibly contradict it? How do you measure ineffable corporate spirit? You can't. It's a dead end for genuine inquiry because it can't be challenged by reality. It offers no way to refine our understanding.
It just is. Because someone said so.
Pretty much. Popper himself used this idea, this razor, to critique fields like astrology. Think about a horoscope prediction. A surprise is in your future.
Vague.
Extremely vague. It's so broad it can never genuinely be proven wrong. Any unexpected event, good or bad, big or small, can be retroactively interpreted as the surprise.
Yeah, that must have been the surprise.
Exactly. Such statements are often designed purely to be confirmed, to make the reader feel like the prediction was accurate no matter what actually happens. Falsifiability, by stark contrast, forces our ideas out of this comfortable, often self-serving fog of certainty. It pushes them into the harsh, clear light of reality.
Where they might fail.
Yeah. It demands that we risk being wrong, that we make precise predictions that could be disproven. And in that very risk, that intellectual vulnerability, lies its immense power. Because by actively searching for contradictory evidence, not just supporting examples, it compels us to genuinely engage with the world as it is, not just as we wish it to be. That's how we edge closer to a more accurate, reliable understanding of truth.
Okay, so we've got our brave, falsifiable hypothesis, this testable idea that actually risks being proven wrong. The next crucial step in our reality toolkit, then, must be gathering the evidence, right?
Absolutely. Now we need data.
How do scientists actually go about collecting objective data to test these ideas? And critically, how do they isolate cause and effect? Separate it from just two things happening at the same time? What's the gold standard here?
Right. When it comes to isolating cause and effect, the controlled experiment is, without doubt, considered the gold standard.
Controlled experiment, okay.
Its beauty really lies in its elegant simplicity, but also its immense power. Its power to untangle that incredibly knotted mess of correlation and causation that we see everywhere.
Ah, the classic correlation does not equal causation.
Exactly that. We've all heard it. And control experiments are designed specifically to address that very issue. They allow us to carefully manipulate one specific variable.
The thing you're testing.
Right, the independent variable, and then observe its direct impact on another variable.
The outcome.
The dependent variable. Well, and this is crucial, keeping everything else as constant as possible.
Okay, so you change one thing and see what happens.
Basically, yes. Take that classic, slightly silly example. We often see ice cream sales rise at the same time as drowning incidents.
Right. So ice cream causes drowning? Obviously not.
Obviously not. A superficial correlation might suggest that. But a controlled experiment, or even just careful systematic observation, would quickly reveal the hidden confounding variable.
Which is?
Summer heat, right? Hot weather independently drives both the desire for ice cream and the likelihood of people going swimming, which unfortunately increases the risk of drowning.
Ah, the hidden factor.
Exactly. So a controlled experiment systematically changes only that independent variable. Let's say it's a new fertilizer you're testing on a plot of crops.
Okay.
You then carefully measure the effect on the dependent variable, the outcome you care about, like the crop yield. And crucially, you maintain a control group.
Control group.
Yeah, a group that's treated exactly the same in every other way, but doesn't get the new fertilizer. Maybe they get the old fertilizer, or no fertilizer, or even the placebo fertilizer, if that makes sense in the context. Keeping everything else the same allows you to isolate the effect of that one thing you changed.
So you can compare the results Directly?
Precisely. This careful isolation allows us to make incredibly powerful inferences about what is actually causing the change we observe. It allows us to say, with a reasonably high degree of confidence, okay, X likely caused Y in this context.
That makes sense.
Now, it's worth noting, though, even the gold standard isn't always perfect. Designing truly blinded studies where maybe the researchers or participants don't know who's getting the treatment can be really hard in some areas, like, say, psychotherapy research or surgical trials.
Right, you can't really fake surgery easily.
Exactly. And there's always the question of generalizability. How well do findings from a highly controlled lab setting translate to the messy, complex real world? That's a constant debate.
Okay, so controlled experiments are the gold standard when possible. But that makes perfect sense for things we can directly manipulate in a lab or a field. What happens when running a controlled experiment just isn't possible? Or, even worse, it's completely unethical?
Yeah, that's a huge consideration.
Like, you brought up smoking and cancer earlier. We obviously can't ethically force a group of people to smoke for decades just to study the link definitively through experiment.
Absolutely not.
So how do scientists gather evidence in those really complex, real-world scenarios where direct intervention isn't an option?
That's an excellent point, and it really highlights the adaptability and, frankly, the ingenuity within the scientific method. In cases like that, meticulous observational studies become our lens for understanding.
Observational studies.
Now, they can't establish cause and effect with the same definitive certainty as a randomized controlled trial. We have to be clear about that. But they can build an absolutely overwhelming statistical case for a strong association, strongly suggesting causation.
How do they work?
There are various types. You have cohort studies, where researchers follow a large group of people, the cohort, over a long period of time, maybe decades, to see who develops a particular disease or outcome, comparing those who were exposed to something versus those who weren't.
Like the smokers versus non-smokers.
Exactly. Then you have case control studies, which work backwards. They compare people who already have a disease, the cases, to a similar group of people who don't have the disease, the controls, and look for differences in their past exposures.
Trying to find the risk factors.
Precisely. Think about that pioneering work you mentioned on smoking by epidemiologists like Richard Dahl and Austin Bradford Hill back in the 1950s.
Right. They couldn't do an experiment.
They couldn't. But through massive long-term cohort studies, they famously tracked thousands of British doctors. They meticulously compared the health outcomes, rates of lung cancer, heart disease, and so on, between the doctors who smoked and those who didn't.
Over many years.
Over many years. This rigorous observational approach allowed them to build an absolutely unassailable statistical case against tobacco. They linked it causally to lung cancer decades before we fully understood the precise biological mechanisms of how smoking damaged cells.
So the statistics were overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Their work didn't just show a correlation. It showed things like a dose-response relationship. The more you smoke, the higher the risk. It showed consistency across different studies. It pointed towards a plausible biological pathway. All these things together contribute to an incredibly strong inference of causation, even without a direct experiment.
Any other examples?
Oh, sure. Think about John Snow, way back in the 19th century, tracing a cholera outbreak in London to a specific contaminated water pump on Broad Street. He did that by carefully observing the patterns of the disease, mapping where people who got sick lived and where they got their water. That was brilliant observational epidemiology.
Finding the source without knowing about bacteria yet.
Exactly. Or, more recently, the work linking lead exposure, maybe from paint or gasoline, to developmental problems in children. Again, largely based on observational studies tracking exposure levels and health outcomes over time. These studies show that with careful, systematic observation, robust statistical analysis, and considering multiple lines of evidence, we can still gather incredibly powerful evidence to test hypotheses, even when direct experimentation isn't feasible.
So there's like a hierarchy of evidence.
Absolutely. Understanding that hierarchy from anecdotes at the bottom, through observational studies, up to randomized controlled trials and systematic reviews of those trials at the top, is crucial for critically evaluating claims.
Okay, so whether it's through meticulous experiments or carefully designed observational studies, the goal is always to collect objective data. But data alone, it's just numbers, right, or observations. It's inert until someone makes sense of it.
Exactly right.
The real intellectual heavy lifting happens in the analysis, I guess.
It does. The next crucial step, after you've collected your data, is the analysis. This involves interrogating the results, looking at them with an open but also, vitally, a skeptical mind,
Skeptical even of your own results.
especially of your own results.
Mm.
It's not about trying to force the data to prove your initial hypothesis right. It's about letting the data speak for itself, even if, perhaps, especially if it contradicts what you expected or hoped to find.
That's where statistics come in, right?
Precisely. This is where statistical tools become essential. They help us determine if the patterns we observe in the data are actually meaningful, or if they could have just occurred due to random chance, random variation.
Okay. And what happens if the data shows nothing, no effect?
Ah, the null result. This is actually fascinating and often misunderstood by the public. In science, finding no effect or no significant difference between your experimental group and your control group is considered just as valuable scientifically as finding a positive effect.
Really? Why? It sounds like a failure.
Not at all. A null result tells us something very important. It tells us that under the conditions of our study, our particular hypothesis is likely wrong, or perhaps that the effect, if it exists at all, is too small to be detected by our current methods.
So it eliminates possibilities.
Exactly. It allows us to eliminate a possibility from consideration, which helps us refine our next question, narrow down the field of inquiry. Science, in many ways, progresses by pruning the branches of failed ideas. It's a process of elimination that, hopefully, gets us closer to the truth.
Huh. I never thought of it that way.
Now, we do have to be mindful of something called the file drawer problem.
The what?
The file drawer problem. It's the tendency for studies with null results or negative results to be less likely to be published than studies with positive, exciting results. They sometimes end up stuck in researchers' file drawers.
Ah, so the published literature might be skewed towards positive findings.
It potentially can be, yes. Which is why transparency and efforts towards publishing null results are increasingly important in many fields. But the core point remains. Finding out what doesn't work is a crucial part of the scientific process.
Okay, so after the analysis, you draw a conclusion, but it sounds like it's not final.
Definitely not final. A scientific conclusion is never, ever a proclamation of absolute, unshakable truth. It's much more humble than that. It's a statement of what the evidence gathered in this particular study actually supports.
With caveats.
Exactly. It's always presented, complete with an honest accounting of the study's limitations. What couldn't it test? What factors might have influenced the results that weren't controlled for? What population was studied, and can we generalize? And crucially, an acknowledgement of the statistical probability that the observed result might have simply been due to chance.
Humility and transparency.
Those are hallmarks of robust scientific inquiry. It emphasizes that knowledge is always provisional, always open to revision based on new evidence. Science is a process of gradually reducing uncertainty, not eliminating it entirely.
What's really striking me here is that the scientific method, it isn't just about one person diligently testing an idea in isolation.
No, not at all.
Its true genius, maybe its real enduring power, seems to lie in its communal nature. It feels like a collective endeavor, right? Like a huge ongoing conversation across disciplines, across generations.
It's a perfect way to put it. Connecting this to the bigger picture, the scientific method is fundamentally a social process. It's an entire ecosystem of ideas, but also an ecosystem of intellectual accountability.
Accountability? How so?
Well, this ecosystem is designed deliberately over centuries to filter out individual bias, those cognitive shortcuts, those personal blind spots we talked about earlier, and it's designed to strengthen the reliability of our collective knowledge.
Okay, how does that filtering happen in practice?
So after a scientist or a team conducts their research, meticulously collects their data, analyzes it, and draws some preliminary conclusions, their work doesn't just get published immediately. First, it has to face the crucible of peer review.
Ah, peer review. I've heard of that. What does it actually involve?
It involves other anonymous experts in the very same field, peers, who typically have no vested interest in the outcome of that specific study. They scrutinize every aspect of the research.
Everything.
Pretty much everything. They examine the methodology. Was it sound, appropriate, rigorous? They check the analysis. Were the statistics correct? Were the interpretations valid? They look at the conclusions. Are they genuinely supported by the data presented? They're actively looking for flaws, for hidden assumptions the original authors might have missed, for alternative interpretations of the data.
And they're anonymous.
Often, yes. It could be single-blind, where the reviewers know who the authors are, but the authors don't know who the reviewers are. Or it can be double-blind, where neither knows the other's identity. Each system has its pros and cons regarding bias.
Is it a perfect system?
Oh, definitely not perfect.
Yeah.
It can be slow. Sometimes reviewers have their own biases, maybe against novel or unconventional ideas, or perhaps unconscious biases related to the author's institution or background. And yes, biases can still creep in. Mistakes can be missed.
But it's better than nothing.
Much, much better than nothing. For all its imperfections, peer review serves as a critical, high-level filter. It catches a vast amount of shoddy, poorly conducted, or unsupported work before it ever sees the light of day and enters the scientific literature. It's the first major check against human error, individual blind spots, and sometimes even outright fraud.
Okay, so it passes peer review, gets published in a journal. Is that the end of the scrutiny?
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
There's an ultimate test, isn't there? Something that truly separates the robust, lasting findings from the ones that might just be interesting or perhaps fleeting or maybe even wrong.
And that is?
Replication.
Replication. Makes sense. Can someone else do it too?
Exactly. That's the crucial foundational question. Can another independent researcher, working in a totally different lab, maybe in a different country, follow the exact same steps, the same methodology described in the published paper, and get the same, or at least very similar, results?
What if they can't?
If a finding cannot be reliably replicated by others, its validity comes under serious question. It strongly suggests the initial finding might have been a fluke, maybe just a statistical anomaly. Or perhaps it was due to some uncontrolled variable specific to the original lab environment or procedure. Or, in rare cases, maybe even misconduct.
I've heard about a replication crisis in some fields.
Yes, that's been a major topic of discussion, particularly in recent years. Some fields, notably areas like social psychology, but also parts of medicine and other disciplines, have faced challenges where some foundational well-known studies have, upon careful re-examination by independent teams, failed to be reproduced.
That sounds bad for science, like it undermines trust.
Well, to outsiders, or maybe those not familiar with the inner workings of science, it might look like a catastrophic failure of the scientific process itself. It can certainly be disconcerting.
Yeah.
But if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the way the system is supposed to work,
Yeah.
in reality, this is the immune system of science working perfectly, albeit sometimes painfully and publicly.
The immune system, how so?
It's a testament to the system's fundamental commitment to self-correction. It means that ideas, even widely accepted ones that are not robust enough or were perhaps based on chance findings or maybe weren't as universally applicable as initially thought, they eventually get weeded out through this process of replication attempts. It's painful, yes, especially for the original researchers, but it's necessary.
So it's science correcting itself.
Precisely. This self-correcting ecosystem, built on institutionalized skepticism, this constant feedback loop of questioning, testing, peer-reviewing, replicating, and retesting its own conclusions. This is exactly what allows a reliable consensus to eventually emerge from what is often a messy, very human process of discovery.
So consensus builds over time through lots of scrutiny.
Exactly. It's why science, despite setbacks and corrections, converges over time on increasingly reliable understandings of the world. It's slow, it's often frustrating, people argue,
Yeah.
but ultimately, it's the most robust method humanity has ever devised for building trustworthy knowledge.
Okay, this is fascinating. We've talked about the theory, the framework, the mindset, the communal checks and balances. But let's bring it back to the real world. This isn't just some abstract intellectual exercise, is it?
Oh, absolutely not.
This reality toolkit, the scientific method in action. You said earlier it fundamentally shaped the world we live in. It literally built modernity around us.
That's not an exaggeration at all. To say this toolkit built our modern world is, I think, completely accurate. And what's truly fascinating here is the dynamic, the symbiotic dance between science and technology.
Symbiotic dance.
Yeah, it's this powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. Basic scientific discoveries, often born from just purely theoretical inquiry, someone being curious about how the world works at a fundamental level, these discoveries fuel the creation of new technologies.
Okay.
And then those new technologies, in turn, give scientists more powerful tools, more precise instruments, faster computers, new ways to observe the universe or the microscopic world, which then enable even further scientific discoveries.
Ah, so science leads to tech, tech helps science.
Exactly. This beautiful iterative cycle is directly responsible for nearly every single advancement we now take completely for granted. From the device you're listening to this on right now, to the food on your plate, to your own expected lifespan.
Okay, let's talk specifics. Give us some concrete examples of this toolkit in action, building our world.
All right, let's start with modern electronics. Consider the device you're using right now, your phone, your tablet, your computer.
Okay, got my phone right here.
Its very existence is a direct result of physicists back in the early 20th century exploring the totally bizarre, counterintuitive quantum world of the atom.
Quantum physics. That sounds pretty theoretical.
Extremely theoretical at the time. Scientists like John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, William Shockley, working at Bell Labs after the war, they were delving into purely theoretical work on how materials like semiconductors, things like silicon and germanium, behave at the atomic level, understanding electron energy bands, stuff like that.
Sounds abstract.
It seemed incredibly abstract. But this foundational, curiosity-driven scientific inquiry into fundamental physics, understanding semiconductors, led directly to their invention of the transistor in 1947.
The transistor. I know that's important.
Foundational. The transistor is the basic building block, the fundamental component of all modern electronics. It allowed us to miniaturize circuits, make them reliable, use less power. It powered everything from the first pocket radios to the computers that sent missions to the moon, and now to your smartwatch and the massive supercomputers driving AI. The entire digital revolution rests on that initial scientific understanding of quantum mechanics and semiconductors.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge one. What else? Beyond gadgets.
We'll think about something even more fundamental, food security.
Right. You mentioned that we often take for granted that our grocery stores are just full, that widespread famine isn't a constant threat in many parts of the world anymore.
But that absolutely wasn't a given for billions of people just a few generations ago.
So how did science change that?
Or consider our food system. The Green Revolution of the mid-20th century. This is a phenomenal testament to the scientific method being applied systematically to a global existential problem: how to feed a rapidly growing population.
Who led that?
It was led primarily by a brilliant American agronomist named Norman Borlaug. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for it. This was a systematic application of scientific principles on an unprecedented scale.
How did he use the scientific method?
Borlaug and his teams used it rigorously. They engaged in systematic hypothesis testing. They did meticulous crossbreeding experiments with thousands of varieties of wheat and rice. They ran extensive controlled field trials across different climates, different soil types in places like Mexico, India, and Pakistan.
What were they looking for?
They were focused on identifying specific genetic traits, developing varieties that produced much higher yields per acre, that were resistant to common devastating diseases like wheat rust, and that had shorter, stronger stalks so they wouldn't fall over before harvest.
Hypothesis, experiment, analysis.
Exactly. His work, often conducted in really challenging field conditions, is widely credited with saving over 1 billion people from starvation. It dramatically increased food production in critical parts of the world. It demonstrated the profound, life-saving impact of rigorous scientific inquiry when focused on practical human problems.
That's incredible.
Now, it's fair to say the Green Revolution also had some subsequent criticisms regarding its environmental impact, reliance on fertilizers, pesticides, water use, and some socioeconomic consequences related to biodiversity and farmer debt. Those are important discussions. But its initial, immediate success in averting mass famine was undeniably a scientific triumph based on applying the method.
Okay, electronics, food. What about health?
Lifespan.
Ah, yes. The staggering increase in average human lifespan over the last century or so. This is perhaps one of the most compelling testaments we have to the power of scientific medicine.
How so?
Well, it truly dragged the practice of healing out of the realm of superstition, guesswork, ancient traditions that were sometimes harmful, like bloodletting.
And into the evidence-based world. Driven by breakthroughs like germ theory, understanding that invisible microbes cause disease. Then, the development of highly effective vaccines, the discovery of antibiotics, and crucially, the adoption of rigorous randomized controlled trials, or RCTs.
RCTs, you mentioned those.
Yes, these are where patients are randomly assigned to either receive a new treatment or a control, like a placebo or the existing standard treatment. Often they're double-blinded, meaning neither the patient nor the doctor administering the treatment knows who's getting what, to avoid bias.
That sounds like a perfect application of the controlled experiment principle you described.
It is a perfect ethical application of the controlled experiment to human health. RCTs allow us to definitively figure out which treatments actually work, which ones don't, and which ones might be harmful. This evidence-based approach has led to the eradication of diseases like smallpox, the near eradication of polio, dramatic reductions in infant and maternal mortality, and effective treatments for countless other illnesses. This toolkit observation, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, peer review, replication, it demonstrably works. It improves the quality and the length of our lives in countless profound ways. It has shaped and continues to shape our very civilization.
Okay, so we've gone deep into the information chaos. We've explored the history, the principles, the power of the scientific method, and seen its incredible transformative impact on our world. Now let's bring it home. What does this all mean for you, our listener, right now?
Yeah, the practical application.
How do we take this formidable toolkit, the scientific method, and actually apply its principles in our own daily lives? Far from the lab, amidst the constant barrage of headlines, social media posts, advertisements, everything.
Well, I think it really begins by cultivating a specific mindset, a mindset of inquiry.
Mindset of inquiry, okay.
The most crucial step, really, is to consciously transition from being just a passive recipient of information, just absorbing whatever floats across your screen or into your ears, to becoming an active, critical investigator.
Investigator of everyday information.
Exactly. When you're faced with an online claim, a catchy news headline, a passionate post from someone, a political promise, even a health tip from a well-meaning friend, don't just accept it at face value. Pause. Approach it with a healthy dose of scientific skepticism. Start asking questions. Actively look for reliable evidence.
So develop an internal pause button.
That's a great way to put it, a mental circuit breaker. Create a small space between encountering a piece of information and forming a belief or sharing it.
Okay, that's the starting point, cultivating that inquiry mindset. But how do we actually do that in practice? Especially when we're busy, time is short, the information overload is intense. Can we boil it down? Like, is there a simple, actionable mental checklist we can run through? Questions that embody the scientific method's core principles.
Absolutely. We can definitely create a kind of mental checklist. Let's walk through an example. Imagine you see an online ad or maybe a social media post making a claim like, "This amazing new supplement made from rare Arctic berries instantly boosts your immune system."
Okay, sounds appealing, maybe a bit hypey.
Right. So here's how that mental checklist, applying the scientific method's principles, can guide your thinking and protect you from potentially unsubstantiated claims.
Okay, question one.
First, and maybe most importantly, who is the source?
Right, where is this coming from?
This is fundamental. Is this claim being reported in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, meaning it's already been vetted by other experts, or is it coming directly from the company that's selling this Arctic berry supplement?
Conflict of interest check.
Big time. Who is the doctor or expert they might cite? Are they a legitimate medical researcher at a reputable university with actual publications in immunology and, crucially, no financial ties to this product? Or are they perhaps a celebrity endorser or maybe a chiropractor with an online storefront who makes a significant profit from selling these very supplements? You have to assess both the expertise and the potential conflicts of interest. A reputable, independent source carries far more weight than a self-interested one. This just takes moments to check, usually, but it's incredibly powerful.
Okay, check the source and their motives. Next.
Next question. What is the claim exactly?
Be specific.
Yes, scrutinize the specificity and the testability of the claim itself. What does boost your immune system even genuinely mean? That's incredibly vague. Essentially an unfalsifiable claim, isn't it?
Right.
What objective, measurable evidence could ever truly prove or disprove something so nebulous?
Good point. It can mean anything. Feeling slightly more energetic.
Right. A truly scientific claim would be far more specific and measurable. For instance, a scientific claim might be, this supplement reduces the average duration of the common cold by 10% in adults over 50 compared to placebo. Or maybe, this supplement increases the blood level of a specific marker of immune cell activity, like T cell count, by X percentage in a statistically significant and clinically relevant way. Specificity makes a claim testable and therefore scientific. If a claim is too vague to be disproven, be immediately suspicious.
Vague claims are red flags. Got it. Third question.
Third, what is the evidence?
Show me the data.
Exactly. This is where you demand the highest quality of evidence appropriate for the claim being made. Is the evidence presented just a personal anecdote? My cousin took it and she felt better in a day.
Happens all the time.
It does. And while personal experiences can feel compelling to us, they are not reliable scientific evidence. Why? Because they lack controls, they're subject to all sorts of biases, coincidence. Or, conversely, does the source provide a link to, or at least reference, a rigorous, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in a reputable, peer-reviewed journal?
The gold standard again.
That would be the gold standard for a health claim like this, where a large group of people were randomly given either the supplement or an identical-looking and active placebo Neither the participants nor the researchers knew who got what until the end, and objective, measurable health outcomes were recorded and statistically analyzed. You should demand that level of evidence for significant health claims, especially if they sound too good to be true. And remember that hierarchy of evidence we talked about, an anecdote, is at the bottom. A single RCT is good. A meta-analysis combining results from multiple high-quality RCTs is usually considered the strongest evidence.
Demand strong evidence. Okay, what's the last check?
And finally, always ask, is there an alternative explanation?
Could it be something else?
Exactly. This is crucial for truly critical thinking, and it directly combats our old friend confirmation bias. Even if someone did feel better after taking the Arctic berry supplement, could their cold have simply run its natural course? Most colds get better on their own in a few days anyway, regardless of what you take.
Right, coincidence.
Or could it be the incredibly powerful and very real placebo effect? We know this is a genuine phenomenon where a person experiences a real improvement in their symptoms simply because they believe they're receiving an effective treatment, even if that treatment is completely inert, like a sugar pill.
The mind is powerful.
Very powerful. So always consider these alternative, often simpler, more parsimonious explanations before jumping to the conclusion that the intervention itself was responsible. The scientific method trains us to look for the simplest explanation that fits all the available evidence, not necessarily the most exciting or marketable one.
Source, claim, evidence, alternatives. That's a great checklist. That internal checklist, those simple but powerful questions, it really does feel like it transforms us from just passive consumers of information into active, critical thinkers.
It really does.
It gives us a structured way to just pause, take a breath, and truly evaluate what we're encountering, rather than just reacting instinctively or emotionally. It's like installing a mental filter.
Precisely. It slows us down. It forces that crucial pause between encountering information and forming a belief about it, or worse, sharing it. And this whole process using this toolkit encourages us to become comfortable with nuance, comfortable with uncertainty, understanding that very few things in the real world are absolute binaries, true or false, black or white.
It's usually messier.
Usually much messier. It fosters a willingness, maybe even an eagerness to change your mind when you encounter new, compelling evidence. And that isn't a sign of weakness or being indecisive. It is the very definition of intellectual growth. It allows us to adapt and refine our understanding as new information becomes available, which is exactly what the scientific method, as a process, does for humanity's collective knowledge over time. It gives us the agency, really, to construct our own informed reality rather than just having it dictated to us by the loudest voices or the most convincing marketers. #outro.
So wrapping this up, in an age that feels defined by this constant, often exhausting struggle between signal and noise, where genuine insight can just be drowned out by chatter, by misinformation, by deliberate manipulation, the scientific method, it's really clear, is not just for scientists and labs anymore. It's not tucked away from the daily grind. It is truly for all of us.
It's far more than that, I think. It is a universal framework, a way of understanding the world around us, of discerning truth from falsehood, of building reliable knowledge step by step. It is our shared intellectual inheritance, this powerful toolkit for deciphering reality. And honestly, it feels like our most reliable guide for navigating the turbulent waters ahead.
It feels hopeful, in a way.
It is. It is ultimately an act of profound optimism.
Yeah.
It's grounded in a belief that by observing carefully, by thinking critically, by testing rigorously, and by being rigorously honest about what we find, even when it's uncomfortable, we can collectively get closer to the truth. One question, one piece of evidence at a time. It's really a call to intellectual adventure for everyone.
I love that. A call to intellectual adventure. So as you go about your day after listening to this, encountering all sorts of claims and information on every screen and every conversation, maybe ask yourself this. If we truly embrace this mindset, this reality toolkit we've been talking about, and apply its principles with real intellectual courage, what seemingly unshakable truths in our own lives, in our own understanding of the world or ourselves, might we discover are actually just untested hypotheses? What personal biases might we uncover if we look closely? Keep digging, keep questioning. And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.